Right. Now, if that were true, what difference would it make to the story, first of all?
No difference.
No difference. Has no relevance whatsoever. Was it some of the worst, most pointless moments on television?
Yes, it was.
Yes, it was. But the consensus is that you did say something wrong here. Even you conceded this point multiple times. On The View and on Fox last night, you conceded that you said something wrong here.
And I also said it on the air before, I believe.
Right. So here we go. Upon further investigation, this is, again, the 2 minutes.
This is 2 minutes, okay.
Where I actually listened to what you said.
Okay.
We've come up with an incredible truth. This is cut forward, Dan. You didn't say that at all. Never did you say anything like Barbara came over to me. Listen for it, and listen very closely when you hear this.
Now, as the train took off, and Barbara said, "Land back," and I said, "Yes, Mrs. Walters, how are you?" Okay, I walked up, so you know. I walked up to Miss, because she was looking at me. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if she was just looking at me and thinking about somebody else, or, just, how sometimes you'll just be staring at people and you just don't even know you're staring at them?
Right.
Yeah. That happens to me.
So this is the retelling of the story. So,
which before is before The View.
So you clarify it, but if you listen to the audio, Dan, if we could play the stuff they played on The View, then you can clarify. You clarified something you didn't need to clarify. At no point did you actually say that Barbara came up to you first. Listen to the audio.
And so there were 4 seats at this table, and it was empty. So we get in, and we sit down at the table, and the lady says, no, you can't take those. Why not? They're reserved.
Yeah, this is
They're reserved. You can't reserve. No, these are reserved. Now I'm thinking, Joe Amtrak Biden is getting onto the train, because you cannot reserve a seat on Amtrak. They don't do it. Well, all of a sudden the police enter, clear the path. It's Barbara Walters and Whoopi Goldberg. Oh, and Steve Kroft. How did they reserve seats on Amtrak when you can't reserve seats on Amtrak? Now, as the train took off, and Barbara said, "Land back."
Okay, that's all you need to hear, but that's the whole point. So the train takes off, and Barbara says something to you.
Now, she didn't say. Okay, so here's the way it happened. She didn't say Glenn Beck. I said Ms. Walters, Glenn Beck, and she said, "Yes, you're going to be on The View coming up."
Now,
that's what she said.
Why didn't you say what the Amtrak conductor said during that time?
Because he may have said tickets. He may have said
Now,
that.
is it because tickets isn't relevant at all to the conversation?
Yes.
Okay, so what you're saying is you may have jumped into the relevant point of the conversation. At no point did you say Barbara came over to me. You just said the train left and Barbara said this. Now, and the worst part is, in the very odd case that it may have implied that Barbara came up to you, for no good reason later on the radio, you clarified it, as we played earlier, and you said, "Oh, no, Barbara actually didn't come up to me. I went up to her."
I believe that Whoopi Goldberg does not think that those seats were reserved. I don't think she calls to have them reserved. This is my speculation. We never got to this part. We never got to any. We never got to any of that. Any reasonable people would have sat around and said, "So, wait a minute, they told you what?" And we would have laughed about it. As my wife said last night, women. And I said, "What does that mean?" And she said, "Do you think, Glenn, if you would have gotten on television, it would have been a bunch of guys, you would have said, 'What the hell is up with that?' I didn't do that. It wasn't reserved." "Really? It wasn't reserved?" And you would have had a conversation about it. She said, "This is what women do." And I said, "No, I just think this is what people with an agenda do." So we never really had an actual conversation on this. I believe that Whoopi also doesn't believe that she had any kind of special treatment, that they didn't reserve those seats.
That was the point of the whole monologue.
Right. Somebody reserved those seats because we were not allowed to sit in them. They had them all covered with papers, and we couldn't sit in them. When we got onto the train, they walked in. Steve Kroft did not sit with them. The police walked him up to those seats. Barbara said, "You want to sit here?" Blah, blah, blah. They sit there. Well, that's where the police were standing. Standing right there. That's when the person who told us they were reserved took all of those papers up and moved them off. I mean, so now, does Barbara even know? This goes back to my point that Barbara has been living in such an elitist sort of world for so long. And, she's, and I think that she has now gotten to the point to where she doesn't even know. She doesn't even know. I think that's the way I just happen to find those seats there. Somebody called to reserve those seats. And if it wasn't Barbara Walters and Whoopi Goldberg that were supposed to sit in those seats, who was it? Who was the celebrity that was supposed to? Now, I haven't done my journalistic, because I'm not a journalist. I didn't call Amtrak to find out who it was, what celebrity didn't sit in those seats. But the lady who said they were saved for someone in New York, and you would see when we got into New York who it was, and you'd be all excited, and then she looked at us and she kind of like, huh? I just thought it's at least who I believe the Amtrak lady thought was sitting there.
Right. So as we look at this, we learned that when you say something that they said was wrong, they called you a liar, okay? Mm-hmm. Now, when they came out and said, oh, well, you kept saying Barbara came over here, that's a lie, by their own definition, they're lying when they say that. So we looked at the audio. You have not said that. We've listened to it all. So you didn't say the supposed lie they accused you of. They didn't do the fact-checking of actually listening to the audio of what you said. Then they didn't do the fact-checking of finding out if you had further clarified it on another radio show, which you had.
Aren't they journalists?
Why? Is it because no one sent Whoopi a link to that particular audio clip? That's the bottom line. No one.
See, again, I'll stand up for Whoopi Goldberg.
No. Wait,
Whoopi Goldberg is not a journalist. Whoopi Goldberg does exactly what I do. They talk about the thing. They talk about the things in life. Barbara Walters, however, is a different story.